Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. A huge welcome to Produce, Mix, Fix and Conquer. My name is Rich Steve Beck. I'm a audio mastering engineer and founder of this awesome community. We've got a fantastic guest coming up for you very shortly. His name is Robin. He's a mix engineer, mastering engineer. He's also one of the directors of education at the Abbey Road Institute, and he's also co-founder of an incredible plugin company, Leapwing Audio. So without further ado, Robin, how you doing, Robin?
I'm great, thanks. Thanks for having me. Really grateful to be here. So thank you.
Thank you. Really honored to have you join us as well today. I'm super excited to explore your journey, have a chat about your music, where you've learned your craft, and also about the incredible plugins that you do, and also the incredible places that you teach as well. So it's going to be fantastic to have a good chat with you. So brilliant. Let's start from the beginning. So like we've done with the rest of our guests over the past few weeks, how did you learn about music as a child? What type of music were you into? What type of music did your parents play to you? How did it all begin?
Well, I think in general, I have a pretty short attention span. So I do, like in terms of music, I went around from everything. Like I listened to metal music, hip hop music, classical music. So as a child, I really went from between all sides. And I think like at the age of 12, 13, that's when I started to get more serious about really about music. And I wanted to save up for like a professional speaker system, and just kind of got like really excited about it like that as like an option for a career. But yeah, before that, I always loved listening to music. I was always like copying cassettes over, or things like that. And I also love the technical side. So I love taking apart recorders and tape machines and things like that. So I always had kind of a neck for the both sides, which that's still there.
Absolutely incredible. So yeah, thanks so much for that, Robin. So tell us, what instrument did you pick up first as a kid? So how did that come about?
At the same time, it was both piano and guitar. But I must say, I've never really grown into like being a really good musician. I love sound and I love playing, but yeah, like I never consider myself to be like a really good musician. I love being behind the scenes. But yeah, those were my two first things that I learned to play.
Fantastic. I understand that you're a Norah Jones fan as well. So I understand that was one of the reasons that you got into audio in the first place. Is that right?
Yeah, at that time when she came with her first album, that's when I really wanted, and especially like studio live. Like like when I was 15, my first kind of summer job was actually doing live sound. So that was like going, mostly singing and then doing a few things. But I really learned that like the whole live sound wasn't really for me. I'm too like nitpicky about things, and things have to go so fast. Like I prefer being in the studio. And especially at that time, that album came out with Norah Jones, and I fell in love with her voice, but also the sound. Like I was so inspired by the transmission of emotion through sound. I listened to that album so many times, and that's when I bought, like, I saved up enough to buy like Genelec speakers at the time, which at the time was like really great. Yeah. And yeah, that's where I really like decided that, look, I want to do this for the rest of my life, which that was a big moment for me.
Fantastic. So what did you get into first? Was it mixing? Was it recording? Was it mastering? What was your first taste of audio?
Like not really mixing, because at the time there weren't any like multi-tracks available where you could learn to mix. So it was really like from the ground up, like recording. Like I had a couple of friends who had bands, so I would go to the rehearsal space, try to record it, have with a small interface, and then just figuring out what things don't sound good and tweaking here and there. But it was very minimalistic at the time. So yeah, like at the time there wasn't that much available. So it's only, but I mean, I think what I was very lucky with is that I decided very early on, like at 15 years old, that this is what I wanted to do. So the moment I graduated high school, I immediately went to audio engineering school, and I immediately said like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. So let's go.
Incredible. And that was Amsterdam, SAE in Amsterdam, is that right?
Correct. That's when I was 18, I left Belgium and moved to Amsterdam to study there, which like was a really great journey. Like that was a lot of fun, learning a lot of things.
Incredible. And how did that help the foundation of your knowledge?
Oh, I think it was key. I think, I mean, I'm very like, I love learning by myself and looking things up on the internet, and I love exploring things. But I think one is like having a structure. I think that's very important, of like, these are really the things you need to learn. And then also being surrounded by other people who want the same thing. I think that's very important. We see you. Yeah, so I think being surrounded by like-minded people, and like I was very lucky, because when I moved to Amsterdam, I went to this apartment, and I actually got this apartment with 3 classmates of mine. So we were all together, 4 of us. So it was really great, because we learned a lot from each other as well, besides the classes. So it was just kind of, a way to set the foundation for everything.
Amazing, fantastic. So I understand on the last project that you did there, you needed someone to master, and that so happened to be Mr. Bob Katz.
Yes.
So how the heck did that come about?
Well, to be honest, like there was this band, a really great band from Belgium that I had done, like I'd recorded for my final project, and I had mixed it, and I kind of self-mastered it. And then, a couple of weeks later, the band said, "Hey, we really like the song. We want to put it out. We want to release it. What shall we do?" So I told them, I said, like, I think the mix is pretty decent. I had a good grade. So, but the mastering, like, I have no idea what I was doing. I did something, put some limiter on there, but I have no idea if that's what I was supposed to do or not. So I said, I suggest we have it professionally mastered. And then they say, yeah, like, can you take care of this? So I literally went around and like looked for a mastering engineer, and I looked everywhere, and like even local ones. But then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to try the best for me, because I had just read his book as well, Mastering Audio. So I'm going to try to reach out to Bob. And he was super nice about it. Spoke to the office manager, and, it was affordable. So the band said, yeah, okay, let's do it. And that's how I got to meet Bob. And that's where a lot of things started happening for me.
Oh, fantastic. So tell us about the time with Bob and when you worked with him for 3 years. Is that right? 3
Yes.
years that he was his assistant? Yeah.
Almost 3 years. So yeah, that was like, I finished the project, and we started talking. Actually, it was really fun experience, and that's why I really think it's important to work with a mastering engineer, because that's kind of a question that comes up a lot, of like, oh, but I can self-master. Like, yeah, great. But like for me, what was really useful is that like I sent my makes, he mastered it, but he gave some feedback. He said, you know what, I think it's, I don't know, he calls it like an A. I think it's now an A- master. I took like a B+ mix to an A- master. If you really want to get an A+ master, here are some of the things you should change in the mix. So I did exactly that. I changed that, and he came back and saying, wow, you did exactly what I wanted. Like, you have really good ears, and blah, blah, blah. And then Amazing. I kind of just said, hey, if you ever need like any help or anything, I'm here. I'm done. I just finished school. So if I can help, please let me know. And I don't know how it happened, but he said yes. And that's how I ended up getting a flight all the way to Orlando, going to the US. And that's how I ended up working with Bob, which was an incredible experience. I mean, he is so humble, but he like shares all of his knowledge. And I mean, it was, I couldn't have I couldn't have asked for like a better mentor. Because school is one thing, is like, you learn certain things, but then once you get into the real life, I mean, there's so many other things, and getting a mentor of that caliber, who's not only like really good, but also very open about sharing anything he knows. It was amazing.
Incredible. So what fundamental basics did you learn from Bob during that period, and how did it help improve your knowledge with audio and how audio works, maybe with compression, with EQ, stereo imaging? How did that help take you to the next level?
Well, I think the whole process, and observing the whole process, I mean, at the time we really had like a lot of masters. Like, there were certain days that we would master like 3 albums a day. Like, I remember this one day was like, what was it? It was a really weird order. Like, the manager had kind of put it in a weird order, but it was like, I don't know, Latin music, metal music, and then classical music. So it was like 3 in a day. But the whole process of sitting in the room, seeing how he approaches the mix, seeing what he hears, and you will explain, you will say, like, I feel like this mix has a bit too much this, and I think we can lift this up, give it a bit more impact, or make it warmer, sweeter, whatever. And then seeing, the steps he takes, what parts that he put in the chain. And then also my job was QCing, so that was like listening to the final record. So I would typically do the load in. So that means getting the song from the mix engineer, make sure there's no takes, no pops. So I would hear the mix really early on. I would sit in through the mastering process, and then I would hear it again at the end. So once you do that through a couple of hundred of albums, you really start to pick up a lot, and just things start to click. And I love also how Bob kind of guided me in that, because at some point he would even say, like, hey, before we start mastering, why don't you give it a try, see what you would do, and then I will come in and see if that's the same. And the more we did, the really closer we got to where I would set it up, and he maybe changed like from 0.3 dB to 0.4 dB, but it started to become very minimal, which was really great. But of course, it took time.
Yeah, sure.
But that whole trajectory of seeing a lot of albums being mastered, and the meticulous approach he takes, like, to everything, like checking everything, the whole signal chain every single time, because I remember like checking whether left is left and right is right, which you think after checking it 100 times, but then literally one time after 100 albums, there was this one time where one of the digital processors somehow at boot up, it switched, like literally digital, and left and right got inverted. So it's like, sometimes you would say, oh, but well, if you've checked it 50 times, it should be fine. But it's no. Every single time we're going to check and make sure everything is perfect. And that I really loved as well.
Incredible. So I don't know, when we interviewed Bob Katz, must have been a couple of months ago now, it was next level. It was absolutely incredible. The things that he was teaching everybody, and about how he measures audio differently to LUFS. And he uses his own measurement system, the K system. And just learning that from him was absolutely amazing, and such a wonderful experience. But again, I know that he's a very dynamic mastering engineer, where he loves dynamics, where I know that some mastering engineers just, they absolutely crank the master. And I know Bob is completely worlds apart from that, where he loves dynamics and audio. Do you feel that's maybe where audio is going? Do you reckon that audio is getting more dynamic these days, or do you think a lot more people are still trying to punch audio as hard as they can with their limiters, or is it? Do you reckon it's a bit of both, maybe?
Yeah, I really feel like it's getting more accepted that it's not crushed, because I think we're now in this world where Spotify and everything is loudness normalized. So you could argue that, I mean, for me, like, I work a lot on pop music, like I still don't really release stuff like at -14 or -15 or whatever, like, because it just doesn't sound like everything else that's playing out there. So there is still this trend of like, being able to be in the same ballpark as all the rest. So things are still a bit pushed overall, and especially in the pop scene. But this is slowly going away, but it's going to take time, because nobody wants to put out an album that's so completely different from all the rest, especially in pop music.
Yeah, sure.
So it's going to take time for things to gradually settle in. But I do feel there's a lot more variety nowadays. Like a lot of artists really also make this stance of like, no, I'm going to be dynamic, and don't squash it. And that I think is beautiful, because in the end, that's whoever is the artist can decide what they want it to be. And the fact that it's possible nowadays is good, because before loudness normalization, like, you couldn't, because if you were just too soft, nobody would ever hear you, so that wouldn't work. But the fact that it's possible now is an amazing first step, I think.
It's really exciting. It's exciting just to try new things and try new techniques, and for people to explore audio as well. It's such a wonderful thing. So talking about exploring audio, so tell us about how you started off in music education as well. So I understand that originally started off in Amsterdam, am I right in saying that? But then obviously moving over to the Abbey Road Institute, and how did all that come about?
Well, actually, I worked for a time in Brussels as well, and I did some stuff for SAE Online as well. Like, we did some online programs with Dave Pensado, which was really cool. This was a long time ago. It's gone by now. So kind of started my journey when I came back. So after Bob, I came back. I started working at Galaxy Studios, but also on the side, I worked in education. So I've been combining those things for a long time. And then it is in end of 2015 when I decided to do really drastic changes. Like I decided, like Galaxy, like I'd been there for 7 years. I loved it, but I wanted to do something by myself, kind of start something new. And also I left education, a while before that. But I wanted to do something new. So I decided to do two things. One is open up the Abbey Road Institute in Amsterdam with a team. So co-found that, and also co-found Leapwing, the technology side. Those kind of two things happen at the same time. And then, that's
incredible. Tell us what it was like working with Dave Pensado as well. How much fun did you have working with Dave?
Dave is also such an incredible person. Like I love him. Like he's so humble and so nice. Completely different personality and different like taste wise as Bob. Like he's sound wise completely different. But that's something I really appreciated throughout the years. Like first of all, like a really good friend of mine, he was assistant of Michael Brower, who was also like on the completely opposite side from Bob. Yep. So like learning about their philosophies and how they approach music. Same with Dave. Dave always said, it's better to sound new than to sound good. Those things really stuck with me as well. It's like it's like I started looking at different approaches and kind of figuring out my own. But yeah, Dave is really good. He's also very meticulous. Really goes into all the details. Wants to learn everything. He has all the plugins in the world. I think he probably has the most plugins everybody ever has. And he really knows each one in detail and what works well and what doesn't. So he's very meticulous and such a great person. Like you see it in the show. Like, he's really genuine guy.
Yeah, completely. It's so interesting as well that every time I type in plugin review on Google, Dave will just show up pretty much straight away with yet another review. It's great.
Yeah, he's amazing.
He is indeed fantastic. Thanks so much for that, Robin. So tell us more about working at the Abbey Road Institute. So how did that project initially come about? And how did you get involved with Abbey Road in the first place? Tell us more.
Yeah, like the team at Abbey Road London, so the team that founded it, they've been really good friends. So Carlos Leles is the one who like really created the curriculum with the engineers at the Abbey Road Studios. And kind of that team I've known for a long time, like 10 years before that. So the moment I kind of wanted to do something for myself, like we just started talking and they're like, we just expanded into, I think it was Germany and France at the time. We're really looking to do something else in Europe and we think Amsterdam is a great location. So of course I said, well, I lived there before. Maybe, this is something I could do. So then just putting all the things together. Sorry, somebody's here.
It's fine.
That's but yeah, those things kind of started clicking together and that just kind of opened things up and then we started in Amsterdam and it's been great. Like working with the students there, it was some incredible talent and it was a great experience. But then also like I did that for 4 years. Yeah. And while I was doing that, well, I should go back actually to when I was working with Bob. It's like for some reason we did a lot of remasters of Latin music. So I really fell in love with salsa music, like Celia Cruz, Hector Lavoe, like all the amazing salsa artists that we got to remaster. I really fell in love with. And then later on, I was very fortunate to like work here a lot in Miami with Julio Reyes Copello, who's one of the most amazing producers in the Latin scene. Wow. He's worked with anybody from like Mark Anthony, J-Lo, anybody. I think he's won like 11 Grammys or something, but he really is like one of the best producers I've ever seen working. Like a musical genius. He has like a classical background, but combines his classical musical knowledge with pop music and just really incredible. So I started working a lot with him while I was in Amsterdam. So throughout those years, I was mixing a lot. And we became really good friends. And then at some point, like he's also very passionate about education. And we started talking about the Abbey Road Institute. And then again, we were thinking, maybe we can bring it here, bring it to the US. And that was kind of the next step for me. It's like, Amsterdam has been great experience. But then I was like, okay, let's see how we can bring it to the US. And so I came here to Miami to help set up the school. And that's what we're doing now.
That's amazing. So it's so super exciting as well. I think it's lovely as well the fact that you've got some of the future mix engineers and mastering engineers that are going to help artists of the future themselves.
Hmm.
And it's just so exciting to hear that so many people like yourself are so passionate about education and helping
Absolutely.
these people achieve the next level. It's so important as well, that
Yeah.
happens.
I feel like really as an educator, you have a really important role. Like I
Yeah.
think, but I feel like for me, it's more important than just like wanting to teach people. For me, it's like it works as a full circle, like building plugins, like mixing or mastering professionally and educating. Like I feel like when I educate, I have to prepare my classes, so I have to learn even more, and I like have to really know what I'm doing. But when you teach, you get input, you get questions from students that think so differently from you because it's a new generation. They think completely different, that it makes you think again, like, is what I'm saying right, or could it be seen like that as well? And that impacts the way you build plugins again, or how they want to use it, and what are they looking for. So for me, everything impacts each other, and that is what excites me the most. Is like by teaching, I learn how to build better plugins while mixing as well, of course. But then I also can apply that to the students. I can teach them what I learned from a real life project. So for me, it's a circle, and I wouldn't want to be without any of those parts because I feel they all connect and are super important for me.
That's incredible. How do you have time to put all these different hats on? So the plugin guy, the educator, the mix and mastering engineer. How do you have time, Robin?
That, I mean, that's definitely the tricky bit, but I mean, that's
Yeah.
why I was really happy to do it with a team like Leapwing. We started with three of us, and we each kind of complement each other because we all have different backgrounds. Our strengths are in different areas,
Mm.
and the same with the school. Is like a really good team here in Miami. Is like amazing people who do different things, and the mixing as well. I mean, it's there's also great people involved. Like there's this girl like Natalia. She's like amazing in tuning, so she like has the vocals tuned perfectly before they come.
Yeah.
So then mixing is also a lot easier. So I think it's surrounding yourself with great people, in my opinion, is very helpful.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for that, Robin. That's
Mhm.
absolutely brilliant. Tell us then about what you enjoy mixing and mastering. So tell us about some of the artists that you've worked with. So I know that you've done a lot of work within the Latin music scene, and it's not really something that we've explored too much on the PMFC interviews. Maybe we touched on salsa, like you said, a little bit with Bob.
Mhm.
But yeah, tell us more about some of the artists. I understand you were nominated for a Grammy.
Mhm.
That must have been incredible. So tell us about the artists that you've worked with.
Yeah, absolutely. It was just actually today we had a new release of this artist called Paula Arenas, which is a Colombian artist. She just released her new EP, but her first, which first was an EP and then became an album, which she first got nominated as Best New Artist, I think in 2016, which I started working with her like since the very beginning. And that like with her album release got nominated as best album of the year, and something else like best, yeah, like there was two nominations, so that was really fun. And then there's another album by this Spanish artist called Alejandro Sanz,
Mm.
and he also had this album I think about 2 years ago called El Disco, and I got to mix on the record as well. So yeah, those were the two albums so far. But yeah, I've been very fortunate to work with a lot of artists. We just finished Paula Arenas, another Mexican artist called Carlos Rivera, who just released, well, he just released his album. And then we actually just did a really cool song that was kind of a Spanish tribute song for like a COVID relief fund or something like that. And that was with all like the major artists, like it was Laura Pausini, like I mean a lot of big artists. And the really cool thing was that it was like a guitar solo from Brian May,
Wow.
who really crushed it. I mean, he's like such an incredible person. So that was also fun to work with. And then we also just finished this movie, which
Yeah.
is called Coati, which is produced by Mark Anthony and Sofia Vergara. And that's coming out this summer. So that was like Julio actually here composed all the music, which is like, I think it's like 85 minutes of music in a 90-minute movie or something. It's full of music. And we mix it here together. yeah, so it's yeah, a lot of projects. I'm also doing quite a bit still from Europe. Just finished this song, like a pop song by Eva Simons.
Okay,
Who
nice,
she did something with Will.i.am a while ago, and
brilliant.
yeah, she's also a great artist. So yeah, like trying to do as whatever comes my way, I love doing it, and I put my effort and my passion into it. Try to, yeah.
Amazing. Well, what was it like being nominated for a Grammy as well? How did that? I know that obviously you worked for many years, and it's the dream of a lot of engineers to be in that position. But what was the feeling like being nominated, and that accolade as well that you guys got working on the project?
It was very funny because like especially because we had two albums as album of the year,
Yeah,
and that like I was literally watching there was like a Facebook live stream where one of the like an artist was announcing this, and I literally couldn't believe it because especially like with Paula, like I mean she was kind of like a new artist, and I wasn't even thinking about it in my wildest dream. The other album with Alejandro Sanz, I could see because he had been nominated many times before. He has won multiple Grammys, so I kind of saw it. But then like one of the first albums, they announced her name, and I was like, this is insane. Like I couldn't believe it.
that's
So I mean,
crazy.
in the end, we don't do it for the awards, but it's nice being
Sure.
appreciated as like especially somebody in the background. Like we're not on any of the albums. Like like you don't see our names, but this way, I think it's a great feeling.
Amazing. Talking about, thank you so much for that, Robin. Talking about working with Brian May recently as well. Did you notice if Brian still uses a coin to play guitar? Does he still
No,
do that? I don't.
I'm not sure. I don't know.
It'd be
I didn't
interesting to
know.
find out, see if he
Yeah,
still does that. And I
interesting.
understand you worked with Christina Aguilera recently as well. Is that right?
Yeah, she actually came here to Miami to do like a writing session. So she was here for a few weeks. She's working on her like Latin album. So that was like a really cool like writing session for a couple of days. Just seeing that, I mean, that experience from me from an engineering like point of view was definitely the most insane I've ever seen, because seeing songwriters write a song from scratch and with her in the room, and I mean, the moment she starts singing, it's like everybody's quiet and has goosebumps all over. I mean, it's such a magical feeling to have like real artists like in the studio and seeing them do their thing. No, it was a lot.
Insane. Absolutely amazing. So incredible. So let's have a chat as well about the amazing plugins that you do with Leapwing, if that's good with you.
Of course.
And so we can share about these incredible plugins that I've tried out over the past few weeks, and listened to and tried them on my mixes and my masters. Let's start at the beginning though. So with Al Schmidt, such a massive loss that Al has gone. But tell us about the time that you had with Al, and tell us about the plugin that you worked on with Al as well. So it's great. Tell us more, Robin.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was shocking news. I think 3 or 4 weeks ago. Didn't see it coming. I mean, yeah, like it was such a like sudden news, and it was very tough. But yeah, like I mean, working with Al, like Al is he's like a one of a kind human being. Like I think everybody like in his kind of tributes said that like once, even if you meet Al for the first time, like he will hug you and like make you feel like you've been friends like forever. So like he made you feel like really good. So that I always loved about him. And I met him, I think about 4 years ago, when I was introduced like by a friend, maybe a bit longer, to him. And actually at the first point of contact, I asked him to do a workshop for my students in Amsterdam. So I had him fly over from LA to Amsterdam, and we went in Amsterdam, and then we actually went to Paris as well. He did a workshop there as well, recording with students, which was also like insane. Like, I mean, he
absolutely
just seeing him work and putting up the microphones. We had a band come in that he had never met, and just seeing him do his thing, it was crazy. So that's kind of how we met, and we became good friends. And especially Emiliano, who's like the other co-founder of Leapwing, because he's also based in LA, like he became really close friends with Al. And then I think about 2 years ago, like Al just kind of came up to us and said, hey, like everybody's asking me like, hey, you have such a unique way of listening to music, and you have such a unique approach. You should make a plugin. And of course, Al, being the analog guy, like, he doesn't use plugins. So he's like, hey, is that something we can do together? Because, you guys are great, and I would love to do this with you guys. So of course we said yes, not even thinking about it twice. Yeah. So yeah, that was like kind of the start. Then, I mean, the whole process was also super fascinating, like being able to like analyze, multi-tracks, mixes, looking at all the recall sheets, like, literally went to like many different songs and looking at, what does he use on a certain vocal, like, and the difference between things that he recorded, that he didn't record. It was just really useful to see all of that. And he would also invite us, like, every time I'm in LA, like, he would have sent like a text saying, hey, stop by the studio and I'm mixing this or whatever. And just, yeah, seeing him mix and being able to extrapolate and figure out, what makes him unique. That was, it was a great process. So, like, one of the things especially that intrigued like Emiliano and me the most is his use of reverb to EQ something. Like,
really?
I mean, we all know that he's not a big fan of like EQing something. He always says like record it the right way and be done with it. But then, of course, sometimes in the mix you are like, well, I wish the guitar was a bit brighter or the piano is a bit darker. But instead of grabbing the EQ, he would actually use a different type of reverb, like a warmer reverb to make it darker. So his way of seeing things in both depth, frequency, and dynamics, it was Al. Like, I have not seen many people who have that ability. There's another story of a good friend of mine in Japan that I will never forget. Like, he was doing this masterclass in Japan where he was recording this band, and so they were recording and everything was set up and they were listening back, and so he was listening, and then he was telling the people who were attending, is like, what I feel like the bass is lacking a bit. I wish it would play well. I wish the bass was a bit louder, and so the natural thing anybody would do is, like, you're on the console, you would turn up the preamp and you would make things louder or boost a bit of 80 hertz. The thing he did, though, he changed the Q level of the bass player's headphone, so the bass guitar that the bass player was hearing, he made it less. So the bass player automatically started playing louder, which fixed the mix. It's like, done. That's amazing to have that understand. And he didn't even have to think about it. There was like a split-second decision of like, no, I just turned down the Q and done. Like those kind of things, like, yeah, it's very rare to still see that. Like somebody who has that kind of emotional intelligence of the room, knowing how everybody's playing, how can they play better, how can everything just sound better. Yeah, it was amazing.
Incredible. And the fact that we've just had a comment through from one of our watchers on YouTube saying about the Sinatra sound as well, that he's done. It's just absolutely mind-blowing.
No, for me, and I was talking about it with Bob as well, is like, I mean, I think everybody, like, all of like my favorite records, Bob's favorite, a lot of them are done by Al. Like, it's just, there's no coincidence there, like all of our favorite records, Al is somehow involved. Like, there's no coincidence. Like, yeah, the Sinatra, the Toto stuff. I mean, Diana Krall as well. I mean, it's just so many great records.
Absolutely. So when you were working with Al making these incredible sounds for the plugin, how did you look at each instrument with the vocals and the pianos and the bass and strings? How did you approach each individual part of the plugin when you were working with Al?
Well, like as I said, like really analyzing the multi-track, the mix, looking at the recall sheets, like what did he use on the bass, when it's like a rock song, when it's like a pop song, when it's a jazz song, when it's a big band, and just looking at like really putting it in spreadsheets and figuring out, okay, is there a trend? Like, what is he mainly using? And I mean, he is pretty consistent. Like, there's a lot of things like TLA on a bass is 99% of the time that would happen. On the vocal, there's a lot of Fairchild and Pultec, which also 90% of the time comes back. So he does have a very particular sound that he knows, because he knows how things sound and they sound the way he wants to. So that's what we did, is like really looking at the common things and then based on that, actually create the profiles and yeah, give that in the end to the user.
Fantastic, that's incredible. And then I understand that you had a look at, well, listen to the records that obviously Al worked on as well to really understand more about his processes. Absolutely incredible. And some of the parameters, I was having to play with some of the parameters myself with a mix, and it was just, again, it's like, there it is. You know, it's just what I find about Leapwing though and your plugins is it's just, to me, and I'm not just saying this because I've got loads of plugins that I use when I'm mastering or if I'm tracking an artist, but it's just that the Leapwing plugins, they just easy to use, they sound good off the bat as well. It's incredible. And I think someone just commented about Bobcats as well. It's like Bobcats, I know Bob loves the Dime One, so let's maybe have a chat about the Dime One and that plugin, and the I think Mayo Applebaum, he's done some settings on there as well. So
he did. Both Bob and Mara, they did settings. Yeah.
Tell us about that plugin. Tell us about the
that was actually our first plugin, and I think the point you make is like very important. That was one of the first things we discussed when starting this. So, you know, it all started with Dine One. That was kind of an idea that I had that I wanted to create, and you know, then I talked to Jeroen of like, you know, let's do this together, and Emiliano came on board as well. Yep. So then we kind of put the team together to create it. But something that I found, especially back in 2015, I felt like there were kind of two sets of processors. You really had like the very simple to use, the kind of cheaper plugins. I didn't really find them to sound good, so I personally didn't use them. I would still go back to a lot of analog. Or you had like digital or analog, like both sides, really high-end stuff, which sounded great, but were very difficult to use. Like you almost needed like a master's degree to use it. Yeah. So I really felt like this has to be something in the middle, which creatives, you know, people who want to get like a quick result can use, but they should sound good. Like I really, you know, I'm always, every time we create something, I'm like, it should be very hard for somebody to make this sound bad. Like it should be whatever you do, whichever way you turn it up, it should not sound bad. That's like the one thing. And then, yeah, like you said, it has to be intuitive. So
yeah, absolutely.
For Dine One, the biggest task, which we started with right away, was the crossover filters, because at the time, you know, all the multi-bands out there, I didn't like any of them because they all affected the sound. Everything started sounding phasey. You know, things don't sound clear anymore, and I just didn't like it. So that's where we spent like almost a year of like, you know, figuring out how to build crossovers that can compensate each other, so they, you know, there shouldn't be any issues in the crossover point. So that was a very complex task, but that's where it all started. That was the first thing, building a 5-band. At the first version, you couldn't even change the crossover point, so it was all fixed. And, you know, that was it. And then later on, it kind of developed into building in more features and doing more things. But that was kind of the essence of where it started.
So transparent as well. It's such a transparent plugin as well. It's really, I was literally... When I'm playing with I love lots of different plugins. When I'm mastering, I'm predominantly in the box. But when I was using the Dime One compared to other multiband, like, you know, compressors, and I love other multiband compressors, but and I love color as well. But for transparency, it's such a transparent plugin, and it was really interesting just to go, oh, so if I just move up the faders by 0.6 dB, oh, there's a difference. Push it even further, okay, that's making things louder, but it's not really impacting that much, which is great, which is like quite a very rare thing. It was really interesting to do that. So yeah, it's a fantastic plugin, absolutely brilliant.
That's great, thank you. Yeah, I mean, that was exactly the goal, like being transparent, so you can actually change the tonality of your signal, but without having any artifacts. Like you should say, oh, I want a bit more, you know, high end. I want to have a bit more like in your phase in the mid range, or I want to have a bit more low end, but without any artifacts. You know, it should be just that.
Exactly.
That was the goal.
Amazing. And I've only been exploring it for a couple of weeks or so, but again, Robin, you're gonna have to teach me more about the plugins as well, because I'm just really enjoying them at the minute. They're just really good fun as well, because like you said, because they're nice and simple but intuitive, but they're just fun as well, because like you work with some plugins and they're just overly complicated without needing to be complicated. So yeah, it's absolutely great. Yeah, so with the algorithms as well, when you work with Bob and Mayor, tell us about the process when you work with those guys with the algorithms that the settings that they use.
You mean the presets, you mean?
Presets, sorry, yeah.
Right. So yeah, like both of them actually, yeah. Like yeah, Bob, I think I spoke to first. But yeah, like I just, they use it for a while and then say like, okay, can you come up with a few ways that you use it regularly or that you use it often?
Yeah.
And then they would send back how it would be, and that's kind of how it ended up in the plugin.
Brilliant. No, thanks so much for that. That's incredible. Thanks, Robin. Yeah, so let's explore more. So tell us about the Center One as well.
Sure. So Center One was our second plugin. So that came after kind of Dyne One. Actually, we released Center One before Dyne One because Dyne One just took way longer. Like especially like optimizing the filters. That I mean, it's still ongoing. We're still like working on making it even better. It's a never-ending story, I think.
Incredible.
But yeah, Center One was kind of the second idea that we came with, which was all based on the traditional MS approach. Like I use MS, and I especially, I heard a lot of people, like engineers, love using MS.
Yeah.
But I always felt like I could use it, but in a very subtle way. The moment you kind of push things too far, it starts getting phasey because, the fact that it is not really mid-side, it's some difference. So if you have a guitar on the left and a piano on the right, they will appear in both channels because they will be summed and they will be different. So whenever you tweak things, you just start getting messy things and you start, moving things in the middle. So I always felt like, okay, with digital these days, we should be able to do something better than this very simple trick, because it's literally 4 lines of code to do MS. Yeah, and that got us thinking and figuring out a way to really do discrete separation between left, center, and right. But also what is in Center One is on the left side, the center prominence, which allows you to rebalance your stereo. So actually move things forward or backwards without changing any panning information. So if your guitar is 30% to the right, it will always stay there. So again, finding a very natural way of doing things, but giving you a lot of control. Like you can, on a master, you can zoom it. Like I love using it in mastering when maybe in the chorus, the vocal is not loud enough. Yeah, it's too compressed maybe, but in the verses, it's fine. So you can really automate thing in the choruses. I'm just going to get the frequency range of the vocal and just lift it up a notch, and that's it.
That's incredible.
That's Center One.
Yeah, again, it's brilliant. Center One, thank you very much. Stage One, tell us more about Stage One.
So you're doing it in the right order, though. So it's
good. Good stuff.
It's Stage One, I think, came out 2019. Yeah, I think that's about right. And so Stage One also, like, I think all of them, they kind of start with us having a problem. Like we feel like also we're talking to students. For example, I think this is a really good example where I was listening to so many student mixes that had, like, especially like in Amsterdam, there's a lot of electronic music. Everybody would put their lead synths, phase reversal left and right. When you mono it, there's no lead synth. That's like a very typical, mistake. But I really felt in general, like there was a lot of music out there where things were really wide, but there's a hole in the middle. It's like, there's nothing in the middle, which is the traditional thing, what happens with wideners.
Yeah.
So I felt like, hey, can we create something, especially with what we already know from Center One of, like, being able to identify left, center, and right separately. Can we create an algorithm where we leave the middle intact, but whatever is slightly to the sides, we push it further? So that's the width slider on, which is the first part of the algorithm in Stage One. So that it just takes whatever is like 50% and moves it to 60%, and whatever 70% moves it to 80%. But at least whatever is in the middle alone. So it gives you kind of a new technique to push things wider instead of something that creates a hole in the middle. So yeah, it's a new approach. And then we have the depth, which is the second part of Stage One, which creates directionally optimized reflections. So again, very typical problem. A lot of student mixes sound very flat. Like there's no 3D information. Like something Al is amazing, or was amazing at, is creating this sense of depth. Like you would listen to a Frank Sinatra and you would see the whole stage. Like it was incredible. But a lot of beginners have this problem that the vocal is up front, the drums are up front, and there's no depth in it. So also there, I was like to the team, okay, let's see if we can figure out a way to create extra reflections that don't necessarily sound like reverb. Of course, they are reflections, so they are reverb.
Yeah.
But let's make something that doesn't sound like reflections, but they should sound like your sound is going into the speaker and gives you that sense of depth. So that's what depth does. And then the third one in stage one is monospread, which is the right-hand side, which is a filter that can take a mono source and turn it into stereo. So there are two cases where I think it's interesting. One is obviously when you're mixing and you have a mono source, you recorded an acoustic guitar with a mono microphone or a piano or whatever, and you just wanted to have it wider, so you can actually take the mono, turn it into stereo, which is fully mono compatible. When you hit back to mono, it sounds exactly like it was before, so it's not affecting anything in the sound. And the other thing that I think is really cool is that it can complement width. So as I told you before, like the width, it leaves the center alone. It pushes whatever is on the sides further. But a downside of that could be that, if you leave whatever is, let's say, at zero, and you move whatever is at 10% to 20%, you might have a little gap between 0 and 20% because whatever was there before, the 10% is no longer there. So you can actually use monospread just a little bit, like 4 or 5%, and monospread will slightly take the stereo and make it wider. Like, for example, one of our clients use it on a Kanye West vocal, like where you have a vocal in the middle, but you just want to have it slightly bigger than just mono. So you can just kind of spread it out, and then you can use width to push the rest further. So again, like you have a full soundstage manipulation from sides to depth, and that was the goal in stage one.
And it works. It sounds amazing. It really does sound amazing. I think it's a pleasure. It's just great. And Route One as well, which we'll move on to in a minute. I think someone just posted up a message on YouTube. What we'll do is head over to YouTube comments in a moment, and they've asked if we can actually add the Leapwing website. So what's the URL, please, Robin?
It's leapwingaudio.com.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So we'll add that onto the comment section shortly as well. Fantastic. And Route One, tell us more about Route One.
Yes. So Route One is the one we released last year, just before the Owl plugin. It was August last year, I think. That's our fourth plugin in the One series. Let's say the One series, and that also, again, as with the other three, came from, again, like a problem, not necessarily a problem, but something that we noticed. For example, a lot of mix engineers and producers love using like subharmonic generators. Like the DBX is the traditional way of doing this, and pretty much all plugins or anything else out there is kind of based on this method, which in simple terms, what it does is it pitch shifts the signal down an octave and takes a frequency range, so it bandpass filters that frequency that you want to add and push that in. So that's like the simple way of doing it, which the downside is that it will never be in phase with the original signal. So sound-wise, I always felt like when doing that, and especially when you push things a bit too far, it sounds very detached. Like you feel like you hear the original signal and you hear some flubby thing in the low end, which sometimes can sound good, but I also felt a lot of times I didn't like it. So there with the team, we said, hey, can we do something in a completely different way? So not doing the pitch shifting, but doing something from scratch. So there, what we ended up doing is creating an algorithm that analyzes the incoming signal. So it analyzes pitch and phase, and then it generates a new, basically a sine wave, an octave below the frequency it finds, but put it in fully in phase with the original. So it literally is going to sound like it was part of the sound from the beginning, and also with the ability, because that's the beauty of it. Since you're generating something from scratch, we have the ability to tweak like attack, like boost attack maybe, or give it extra decay, or change the dynamic range of this new sub that you're generating. So you have a lot of control when you want to add like extra sub information on anything. Like I've seen people using it on like pipe organs, but of course traditionally on drums, on bass, sometimes even on vocals as an effect. So it's really, I think, a very powerful tool to use in the production and mix process.
Getting a tight low end. I remember it was Bob Katz said during the interview, when we interviewed him, he said low end is expensive. that's his exact words. Low end is expensive, and he's right. It is so hard to get the low ends, and and it's like you've really achieved that with the Root One. That that subharmonic, that it adds. It just sounds good, and it's tight, and it punches the right way. It's great. It works, and it'll really, really help a lot of people, I feel, when they're doing their mastering and their mixes as well. So how do you even get to what I'm really interested as well to find out about? So I know that you do programming for these plugins as well, so with all the coding as well. How the heck did you learn to do that, Robin, in the first place?
Well, I must say, like, these days, I mean, there's like the team is incredible. I mean, we have some of the best like programmers. So like right now, there's not much I can contribute on that side.
Okay.
Yeah, because right now, like most of the things is like coming up with new ideas and also like features, like, what features are we gonna put in, like how are we gonna name things, and also like when a bug comes in is like figuring out, giving it to the right person. So most of my time is actually on, coming up with new plugins or new ideas for plugins, new updates, things like that. But yeah, like since I was 14, like I actually started like creating websites, and I started learning, back then was like PHP. And then later on I got into like C++ and actually, like building anything that I wanted. I was intrigued by the power you have when you can code. Like you can build whatever you want, like whether it's a website, whether it's like a piece of software, like anything, and you can let it do whatever it is that you want to do. So it kind of opens up your mind to do. And especially now working with programmers that are way smarter than me, it actually helps to also know what's possible, because you can kind of say, hey, can we do this? And when they say no, I don't think we can do it, it's like, think again, I think we can do it. So it's been helpful, but yeah, I must say nowadays there's less programming from my side.
Amazing. The fact that you've got a whole team working for you, I bet that's great. Just been one of the people that just goes, you have a light bulb moment. I'm guessing, does it start off if you're having a mix problem or a mastering problem, and you suddenly think, oh, if I could create something that would actually help that issue or enhance that process? Is that usually how all these ideas come about?
Yeah, typically yes. So I mean, there won't be multiple ideas, and so we don't always find a solution for everything, but we very regularly have this talk of like, okay, like I wish we could do this better. And then especially Jeroen, who's the other co-founder, he's based in Belgium. I mean, he's a really good R&D engineer. Like that's what he's done all his life. So researching and actually, coming up with the basic algorithm that actually ends up in the plugin. That's kind of his strength. So he will, I will tell him like, look, we need to do it in a new, like Root One, for example, is like, I want to do something subharmonic generator, but we need to do it in a different way because the current ones I'm using have these and these problems. So then we started talking about like phase differences and started analyzing. So then he was like, hey, maybe we can do something with pitch tracking. I was like, yeah, that's actually a great idea. So then he goes off into his lab and, he takes like 2 months or whatever, however much he needs. And then at that point, he will render out some audio files. So he'll say, okay, here's this bass guitar, and here is like the extra low end that I generated with the algorithm. Is this correct? So then I will listen and say, well, it is in pitch and it's phase, but it has this artifact, or this doesn't sound good, this sounds good. He will go back. So there's like a lot of iterations.
Yeah.
And then once we kind of are happy with the sound, then we go to the next process, which is actually building the plugin. But yeah, I love the design part because it's a very kind of intuitive way, like, because we really complement each other very well. Like, I mean, you need to have the ideas of what you want to do, but you also need somebody who really can go in depth, research, read like 20 papers on different ways of doing things. And so he's really good at that. So again, great team effort.
Incredible team effort. And I think what really intrigues me, I love outboard gear as well, like we all do. I think the problem I think a lot of engineers find, especially if you're maybe a beginner and intermediate engineer, is the fact the cost of outboard. I mean, who's got, you know, 4,000, 5,000 pounds laying around for a beautiful, you know, 1960s, 1970s pull tech, for example? Who's got the money to do that? You know, and obviously there are some amazing copies out there as well. But it really fascinates me where plugins are going, because I know that 20, 25 years ago, when he said plug-in to an engineer, I'm sure if someone said that to you right at the beginning of your career, you'd be like,
yeah.
But
that's how I felt in the beginning as well.
Really?
Yeah.
The technology now, it's just
absolutely,
it's mind-blowing. Absolutely mind-blowing how things have gone.
To be honest with you, though, like I feel like it's finally starting to pick up, because I really felt like for the longest time and until pretty recently, I felt the amount of innovation in the plugin side was really low. I felt there was only a few companies which were really innovating, and like 90% of them were building another 1176 or an LA2A and another variant of whatever compressor.
Fair enough.
So I'm kind of glad that these, you know, with Suit coming out, like Sound, and like, I mean, there's a lot of smaller companies now as well doing really innovative stuff, which that is the way I would love to see like more things happening, because with digital, like the power is endless. Like you can do anything. Like you have the signal in whichever way you want to look at it, you know, 3 ways, whatever. And analog, there were so many limitations. Like you could only do something in the time, with the components you have. Like, I mean, there's this limited set of components. There was only so much things you could do, you could build. Yeah. And you were limited by that. Like that was it. You couldn't think further. But with digital, like it's endless. Like you could do whatever you want. And I really feel like we're still at the beginning of that.
Very much so. And someone, one of my mentors, they said to me, they said, you know, I was there thinking, oh, you know, I'm going to buy XYZ outboard. And they said, okay, well, how about this? They said, how about maybe stay within the box predominantly? And they said, how about get a really, really good, this was a couple of years ago, get a really good converter for my masters. And, you know, I've kind of traded and built myself up. So I've recently got the last couple of months, got an RME ADI2 Pro FS. So the conversion on that to my ears sounds incredible. And it's just really exciting, the fact that if you've got a good processor and a good A to D, D to A converter as well, and then you've got amazing plugins doing their thing, it's great. You can do everything fairly mobile on the go, and you can go to different studios with pretty much a laptop and your converter and hook up to the speakers and just use the digital gear that you've got on your laptop. It's such an exciting time, you know, to be able to do that. It's great. But then a lot of people, sorry, go ahead.
I know. I think you're like, absolutely. I think you have a great point that the possibilities are endless, but I also feel like for me, like the strength of like a mastering engineer who has their room and is always using that room. I mean, sometimes people forget that as well. I do feel like there is a lot of value in that. Somebody, you know, sits in the same room every day, who's listened to thousands of albums on that system, who know them so intimately. That I think is also very valuable of having a mastering engineer. Whether they use digital plugins or analog gear, I don't really care, but I definitely think it's the experience of like being able to, because sending something to a mastering engineer is about trust. It's, you know, you get somebody to who you trust to sign off and to say, like, you know, this is good to go out into the world to millions of people. And yeah, so for me that's still a critical part of the chain.
100%, absolutely. And talking about rooms as well. So personally, I'm moving into a new room as a mastering engineer starting in August into a commercial space. Someone's just asked on the community, produce, mix, fix, and conquer. Well, we're based in Manchester, and super excited with the Manchester music scene. You know, we've got some incredible bands over here over the years. We are looking for the next Oasis, though, and we do want Oasis to get back together. But I don't think Noel and Liam are going to ever get back together, which is the problem. But, you know, it's just the way it goes, isn't it? But, you know, it's just what fascinates me is that there's just so many great different cities that have got these incredible music scenes. And so we've been talking to engineers from Nashville, where you're based in Miami, you know, all over the world. It's just fascinating just to hear about how the different geographical locations influence all these different styles as well. And Yeah,
No,
where's it going next? Yeah, well, where's it going next with the Latin music scene? Where do you
no,
reckon
but
the Latin?
for me, like that's what is the most exciting to me. Like for example, I think like Michael Brower is a really good example. Like he
Okay.
has a very unique sound. You know, he did his thing with Coldplay and I mean um, um, John Mayer and you know, I mean, so many artists.
Yeah.
And but I feel like that's what it's supposed to be, is like you're supposed to look somebody who you like for a taste. Like actually recently Julio here did a song, and it just was like really rocky in your face, and he said let's have Michael mix it, and I think that makes sense, and I think that's great. Same for me, like when mastering like certain records, I will master, but also
Yeah.
certain records I have Bob master or Gene, who is in LA. So working with different people because they have a certain strength or a certain taste that fits that record, I think
Yeah.
that's really the key. And yeah, like I think the more we can kind of learn about each each person's taste, and like you said, the geographical impact, like bringing me back to the Michael Brower stories, like the fact that I feel always the way I saw it is that he was based in New York, his sound was very loud, but that's the only way to be in New York. Like subways, everything is so loud around you. You better be loud all the time because that's the only way you're gonna get heard.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if it really did, but that's always the way I felt. It's like I felt it impacts the way he makes, and you know, a lot of the records are always super loud.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I think that is cool. Like I mean, it's cool that cities influence musical taste, personalities, and that impacts the sound. And that's in the end we're making art. So getting the right people who have a specific taste that fits the album.
Yeah.
That's the coolest for me.
Absolutely. And someone just mentioned as well about Nashville, saying that a lot of people just think it's just country music, and it's just so many different types of music there. You know, the fact they've got this, you know, really sort of tight knit community there with all these studios that are close by. It's absolutely incredible learning about that area. But it really interests me how music is evolving. And as well, I suppose a lot of kids now are using their laptops, so the music is very electronic. But I think what really excites me is to see more commercial spaces come about again. I think I know a lot of commercial space I'm sure you've seen over the years have closed down. So it'd be really exciting just to see more live musicians and proper drummers, guitarists, bass players, you know, string quartets. It'd be great to see that. As far as the gear that you use as well, so what gear personally do you enjoy? What speakers do you like, and what headphones do you like using at the moment?
Well, at the moment, the headphones I have these Odysseys, and I
Yep.
have my Stax electrostatic headphones, which I love this for like travel, like mobile, if I need to listen or I need to do a recall or something. But my Stax, because the amp of the Stax, like I kind of also modified it, but it's like a huge amp, so it's horrible to travel with. So that I kind of use fixed.
Yeah.
But then here in the studio, we have mainly ATCs, so the two rooms are ATCs.
Incredible.
Forgot the model. One is the big one. In general, I'm maybe more of a PMC fan. I'm kind of in between. I like a lot of things about PMC. I like a lot of things about ATC. So for me, either one works.
Yep.
And so yeah, those are kind of the main speakers that I use the most.
Fantastic. That's absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for that. It's really interesting just to find out about what you actually use as an engineer yourself as well. So when you're with your students, I've seen in the classroom sometimes, do they have speakers set up, or are they predominantly learning under headphones? How do those guys work? How do those guys and girls work?
Yeah, no, great question. So both in Amsterdam, we actually built like a classroom in the studio. So there was like a Neve 72 Neve channel Neve console.
Oh, wow.
With PMC speakers. And also here in Miami, we're setting up like a really cool classroom where not with a console, but with a really well-designed speaker system, because I do feel, yes, I mean, they are working on their workstations where they have an Apollo and they have an iMac and they have their headphones, so they can work individually. But every now and then, it's cool to be able to say, "Hey, can you play it on the big system?" And they will just be able to, hit play, and everybody can hear it, and we can share it. I think having a smart classroom that allows you to play things on a big system that sounds good for the whole class, but also having people being able to work individually, I think that combination is key.
Absolutely. And I bet it's really fun just listening to your students and what new ideas they come up with as well. So obviously we're talking a few minutes ago about, their questions can influence your ideas
Yeah.
as a teacher, but it also influences your ideas as a plugin developer as well at the same time as well. So what's next for you, Robin? What's next on your journey, do you feel?
For now, I'm really happy. Like, I love Miami. I love the scene, and also, yeah, the artists that come by here. I mean, I couldn't wish for anything else. Like, and it's, for me, it's also really promising. Actually, like, I was just here with an artist. Like, she's a young girl called Ella Taubert, and she's like a new generation artist. And I love, like, she, for example, she feels like such a responsibility of being an artist, and being able to send the right message. She wants to write beautiful music, not just like trash, whatever, but really create proper music that is going to last a lifetime. So I really love this place and the people it attracts. So again, like, I'm really happy here, and I also love the Leapwing side. So I mean, for me, I'm going to keep all three of them and just develop them, make them better, and just keep improving all together. But I love being here, so I don't see myself changing anything anytime soon.
Amazing. I was just so excited just to find out what you come up with next as well, Robin. It's so cool. Really, really cool. So
yeah, we're working on some fun stuff. No,
go ahead. No, you go.
No, I was just saying we're working on fun stuff, so you'll definitely see it come by.
Absolutely fantastic. Thanks so much for that, Robin. We've had another comment come through as well. So they're saying that can you ask Robin if he knows a music guy named Mika Hahn at the University of Miami? I don't know if you bumped into them.
No, I don't.
No.
I mean, the tricky thing is I literally moved to Miami the week of the lockdown in 2020. So I came here lockdown, so I haven't even been able to go to many, like, even to the university. I haven't been to the University of Miami, so I have still a lot of people to meet here.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That must be really exciting in itself as well, that the fact that you can start exploring the area as well and finding people and connecting and networking as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I love the studio here because a lot of artists, they come by here, so I see them here. But yeah, there's still a lot of spaces like around that I have to visit. So no, I haven't met that person.
Fair enough. NAMM as well. So do you reckon, is NAMM coming back around again? And is that are the different events starting happening again? So then people, developers like yourself and hardware companies to show off their gear again. Do you reckon, is that starting to open up again? So I think COVID.
Yeah, I think they're doing NAMM Nashville in July, but I don't think we're going.
Okay.
I might just visit, but just to pop by. But definitely as Leapwing, we're not going.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're starting that up again full on. So I'm sure like NAMM in January in Anaheim will happen again, which is always the craziest time of the year. I mean, it's very heavy, like, and especially with like, I wonder how we're gonna deal with this, because every year there's like at least one person of the team has what we call NAMM tracks, which is literally because you're hugging people all the time and you're like surrounded by thousands and thousands of people, so somebody will get sick. So I'm really wondering like how in this kind of current mood with masks, like how we're going to deal with that, and if that will at least improve that so we don't no longer get sick.
Have you ever walked into the drum room at NAMM? I've heard it's very loud when you walk in the drum room.
I walk in and I go back out.
Amazing. Thanks so much for that. That's brilliant. So before we go, so anything else you'd like to add today, Robin, from the conversation that we've just had?
No, I think in general, I'm like really excited about also the music industry. I really feel like, things are picking up. I mean, of course, I'm sad that a lot of artists didn't get to tour and,
completely
were without income for like a year, maybe a year and a half. But things are picking up, and I mean, it's going to be better than it's ever been. And I also feel like there's going to be more and more artists who are really like aware, like both environmentally, socially, and just seeing really like young artists being aware of that and wanting to create good music that impacts people's lives. Like, for me, it's super exciting time that we live in. So I'm happy with that. And on the plugin side, as I said as well, like we're just at the beginning, and I love also what we have with Leapwing. We have such an incredible team, like from an amazing designer to like all the the programmers and the people on the team. So there's a lot of things that will happen.
Fantastic. That's brilliant. So good. Robin, thank you so much again for joining us today. Really appreciate it. An honor to be spending the time with you today. And so the website again to check out, so everyone knows, which we'll put in the comments as well today, is www.leapwingaudio.com to check out your plugins. So understand that there's some trials that people can try out as well on the website.
30-day trials, yeah.
Excellent. So yeah, definitely give the trials a go. I know on our community, so people watching on YouTube, feel free to head over to our community if you want to, which is facebook.com/groups/produce, mix, fix, and conquer. So we're a community, as I was telling Robin before we went live, that started off with 3 friends back in November. The community has now grown, which is crazy, to almost 2,500 engineers, including Grammy-winning pros such as Robin, and also intermediates and starter engineers as well. And everyone's just helping each other out. And we're very much about perception on the community as well. And we are starting now on a weekly basis to discuss plugins. And what we do on our community on a weekly basis is have a chat about plugins. So it'll be really interesting to deep dive into a couple of your plugins, Robin, on the community, and all share our experiences with one another. And yeah, what we're planning to do as well, Robin, is every month do like a plugin Zoom hangout. So we'll have like kind of like some of the pros like yourself on there, and intermediates and beginners, and just get to know one another and deep dive into the plugins and see how it helps our mixers and our masters as well. So yeah, it's great. But Robin,
I love it.
Thank you so much. But Robin, thank you so much for your time. Feel free to hang out just after we finish the live. But thank you so much to everyone for the comments today as well. We really appreciate hanging out with you today. And I'm sure Robin will be very happy if you send any questions through to him directly as well. So anyone that's missed the interview today, again, feel free to catch up and share the YouTube link with your friends as well. There's so much great education that Robin shared today, and some fantastic stories as well. So Robin, thank you very much for your time today, sir. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Really.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Cheers.